from the Montgomery County Norristown Public Library, and today I'm going to show you how to make oatmeal applesauce muffins. But before we start, I just want to go over a few basic things that you need to do before you start cooking. Housekeeping items, if you will. First of all, you need to make sure your hands are clean. Wash your hands. You can never wash your hands too much nowadays, especially with the pandemic, but especially when you're cooking as well. So make sure your hands are clean. Make sure your work surfaces are clean. Your table, your countertop, your stovetop, wherever you're going to be working should be clean. So just use an ordinary dishcloth and some hot water and dish soap and give everything a good scrub down before you start. You want to make sure your hair is out of your face and not flopping around that you have to keep fixing it. So tie it back, wrap something around it to keep it out of your face. If you have long sleeves, roll them up. Any kind of floppy clothing that might get into the food, you want to not wear that kind of stuff when you're cooking. So basically anything that could get in your way and keep your hands from touching the food. If you have jewelry that flops down, bracelets or a necklace that swings in the way, take them off while you're cooking. The less you touch yourself, the cleaner you will be in the kitchen. So get rid of anything that you might be tempted to fiddle with or touch while you're trying to bake stuff. If you have glasses and you need to push them up, use the back of your hand. Scratch your nose with the back of your hand. If you have to sneeze or cough, cough into your elbow. Anything to keep your hands from touching your body, your face. And if you forget or you have to blow your nose or whatever, just wash your hands again. Anytime you touch anything kind of icky, like raw egg or raw meat, you should always wash your hands immediately afterward. So that is all you need to know right now about keeping clean in the kitchen. And now we're going to talk about ingredients. You're going to need flour. Good all-purpose flour is fine. You could probably try to do whole wheat if you had it, or maybe half whole wheat and half all-purpose. But the recipe calls for all-purpose. I haven't done it with whole wheat, so I can't guarantee the results. But, you know, if you feel adventuresome and you want to try, go ahead. You'll need some rolled oats. These are the old-fashioned kind. Sometimes there's an instant kind, that the 1 minute oat or something. As long as it comes in a canister like this, that's what you need. Do not use the microwave instant packets, because they are already partially cooked. So they're not going to give you the same result. Use this kind. You will need some baking powder and baking soda. They might both start with baking, but they have two different functions in a baked product. Baking powder has baking soda in it. It also has cornstarch and some acid, cream of tartar, that triggers the rising action in your baked good. So it's a little bit different than this, but you need both of those. You need some salt, whatever kind you got. You need cinnamon, brown sugar, light or dark, doesn't matter. Some applesauce, and I just happen to, if you just watched my video where I showed you how to make this, I've already got it measured out, but you're going to need a cup of that. You need a little bit of butter, not a lot. You need 1 egg and some vegetable oil. So these are all the ingredients you need. If you got the packet from the library, you will have everything except the oil, the egg, and the butter. And I think that's it for ingredients. We're also going to need some milk. The recipe calls for fat-free skim milk, but I have 2% in my fridge, and that's what I'm using. I really don't think it matters too much unless you're really watching your fat intake. Then if you have fat-free milk, use fat-free milk. Use whatever you got. And you could probably even sub in almond milk or coconut milk or whatever other non cow milk you have that you would prefer to use. So the utensils and other supplies you're going to need a mixing bowl, big enough to hold all your ingredients. You need something to mix with. I like to use a spatula, or you can use a big spoon or a small spoon or a wooden spoon, whatever gets the job done for you, just to stir things up. You're going to need a cup measure and a half cup measure and a quarter cup measure. You need all of those. You will need a liquid measuring cup, which measures a little bit differently than those. You always use this when you have liquid ingredients. You will need a tablespoon, a teaspoon, a quarter teaspoon, and an 1/8 teaspoon if you've got one, and if you don't, we'll deal with that later. You'll need something to melt butter in. I just use a little teacup that I have that's microwave safe. You can use a mug or whatever, a small dish, microwave safe dish, whatever. I like to use a spoon to dig out my flour out of my container. And I think, and we need a muffin tin. We're making 12 muffins, which is a dozen. So you need 12, either 1 12 or 2 6-cup muffin tins. If you have muffin papers, the little frilly papers that go around the outside of the muffins, then good for you. I forgot to get them, so I don't have them, so I'll show you what to do. You'll need some kind of oil. I use the spray oil for the pan, or you can use solid shortening, you can use butter, you can use liquid oil, and just spread it around inside the cups. So the first thing I'm going to do is grease my pan. And I'm just going to, I'm almost out of spray. You just need a little bit. Some people don't like this stuff because they don't like using aerosol sprays. I'm just lazy. I probably shouldn't be, but I am. Okay, so if you have regular oil, just put a little bit in there, spread it around with your fingers. You don't want it soupy, you just want a coating on the inside, or if you use shortening or butter, or even coconut oil, I think would probably work. You just want a coating so that when you flip your muffins out, they'll pop out of there. And like I said, if you have the papers, you just put 1 cupcake paper in each hole, and you can skip this whole part. You're going to preheat your oven to 400 degrees. So we'll let that get nice and warm while we do the rest. I forgot to say you also need a bowl to mix your topping. So for the topping, you need your oats, brown sugar, butter, and cinnamon. So the oats, we need a 1/4 cup of, we're going to mix all these together. So we're going to need a 1/4 cup of the oats. And we're just going to sprinkle this little bit of topping on top of each muffin. This is called streusel. Ever heard that word before? It's a crunchy, sweet topping that you put on. We need a tablespoon of brown sugar. Firmly packed brown sugar is a little bit moist, at least if it's fresh. Sometimes it dries out and you get a big chunk, but you can loosen that up in the microwave for a few seconds if you have that problem. So what I do is I scoop up the brown sugar inside the bag, if you have a bag, and I just sort of press it through the plastic till it's firm. If you don't have it in a plastic bag like that, you can just scoop it out and press it with your fingers and keep filling it until it's firmly pressed down. So we're going to add that. I'm going to smush that up a little bit. Make it easier to mix in. And then we need a tablespoon of butter. So I have my butter here. I've talked about this before in other videos, but real butter is the best thing to use as far as flavor goes, as far as consistency. Butter is fat, basically it's milk fat. You can use margarine and use stick margarine if you're going to use margarine because it has more fat content. If you use a tub butter or tub margarine, they usually put a lot of water in it to make it spreadable and less full of fat. So it's not going to make as nice and crispy a topping. So the butter is, the stick butter is automatically divided into tablespoons. So all you have to do is cut at the 1 tablespoon mark. Just be careful with the knife. Now I just cut right through the package, right through the paper. And you leave a little flap to cover up the rest. I'm going to put it in a little, because we're going to melt this, I'm going to put this in a microwave oven proof container. And I'm going to nuke it for about 30 seconds. And we'll see if that melts it enough. While that's melting, I'm going to measure out my cinnamon. You need 1/8 of a teaspoon. And that is a tiny, tiny spoon that some measuring spoon sets don't have. So if you happen to not have 1/8 of a teaspoon, you can do 1/4 and just kind of eyeball half. Since it's cinnamon, exact isn't going to be too drastic if you put a little bit too much or a little bit too little. So I'm just going to put that much in there. And let's see how our butter looks. Yeah, 30 seconds does just about perfect. Okay, so we're going to pour this. Actually, what I like to do is mix up the dry ingredients before I put the wet stuff on, just to make sure everything is well combined before I even start. So you can just sort of stir that up. This is not the right bowl, but I used my other bowls for the applesauce video and didn't have time to wash them, so this is what I got. Use what you have as best as you can. Whatever you got on hand, you can make do. Okay, so that looks pretty mixed together. And I'm just going to drizzle this melted butter over top. A mug works very nicely for melting butter in the microwave because it's already heat resistant. Okay, so we're just going to try to get that butter distributed through all of the ingredients. So we have some nice crunchy little sprinkles to put on top of our muffins when we have them mixed. Oh, it's kind of jamming up there. That's gonna be yummy. Okay, looks pretty good. Okay, we need our mixing bowl. So first we're going to measure our dry ingredients. So we're going to start with our oats. So we need 1.5 cups of oats. So I have this here. My cup and my half cup. So I'm just going to fill up this cup all the way to the top. You see these are kind of big and flat. I'm making a mess, but that's okay. Oats give you good fiber for your diet. It's good for you, but can still be delicious. Okay. You may wonder why so many of my recipes lately, and because I clean my counter, I can count on it to be clean, so I can do that. A lot of my recipes recently contain oatmeal and apples. It's because I got a crazy amount of ingredients when we first started this whole thing. And, excuse me, now that we're in this pandemic for a while, my supplies are running low on my ingredients, so I have to use up what I have creatively. So what I have are oatmeal and apples. So this is what you're getting. I'm sorry if you don't like either of those things. After the new year, I may not be able to supply any ingredients for you, and you're going to be on your own. But I will still keep posting cooking videos as long as it takes. Okay, so we have our oats, and then we need 1 1/4 cup of flour. So now, when you're measuring out flour, and if you've ever watched any of my other baking videos, you already know this, but when you're measuring out flour, you always want to fluff it up first. You never want to pack your, get into my flour here. I got a big bag. You never want to pack down your flour because that affects your whatever you're baking, because too much flour makes your baked good dry, and you don't want dry things. You want nice, moist, tasty things. So we're going to this is awkward. I can't video. Okay, so you can't exactly see what I'm doing here. Turn this down a little bit more so you can see. Okay, so I'm just going to fluff this up a bit with my spoon so it's not packed down. And then I'm going to put the fluffed up flour in my cup. And if you could only see the other side of this, I'm straddling my tripod so I can reach this. Okay, so you're going to pull it up to the top and lightly level it off. So there's our one. And I'm going to dump that into the bowl, which I will put over here so you can kind of see. Dump that in there. And then I need the 1/4 cup. And do the same thing, fluff it up a little bit. Lightly fill, lightly scrape. Okay, there's our oats, our flour. Now we need a teaspoon of baking powder. Make sure you have baking powder. And usually the can has a little lip on there. And you scoop up what you need. And then you use that to scrape it off to level it. Okay? And if you don't do that, if you don't have this in your can, you can just use a knife or a flat edge of the flat edge of your scraper to do that. So we have the teaspoon of baking powder. Now we need baking soda. Baking soda. Okay, so we need 3/4 teaspoons. So how do we get 3/4 if we don't have a 3/4 teaspoon measure? There are 2 ways that you can measure 3/4. Of course, you can take a 1/4 teaspoon and measure 3 times, or you can take a 1/2 teaspoon and a 1/4 teaspoon, because a 1/2 teaspoon is how many quarters? Do the math. It's fractions. Doesn't bite. 1/2 teaspoon is 2 quarters. 2 quarters equals 1/2. So you can do 3 of these, or you can do 1 of these and 1 of these. I'm going to do 1 of these and 1 of these. Okay. Again, if you have an edge on your lid, use that to scrape off the excess. Make sure it's flat. That had a lump in it, so I'm going to do that again. Okay. So there we've got our baking powder, baking soda. Well, next we need our cinnamon, the same thing, 3/4 teaspoon. So we're going to do, oh, still have a little bit of that in there. Make sure you're, if you're using the same measuring utensils, make sure they're clean before you go dipping them in. And I'm just going to level that with my finger. So that's 1/2 or 2/4, and then 1/4. 2, 3, 3/4. Okay, we got all our dry ingredients in here, and I'm just going to stir them, mix them up. Just kind of bring your spoon or your spatula around and sort of, this is the folding action. You kind of get up underneath your ingredients and flop them over. So you're kind of folding your ingredients over to mix them together. Get them nice and mixed up there. That looks pretty good. Now we're going to get our wet ingredients, and then we're going to mix into another bowl, which I just only realized just now that we need for our wet ingredients. So let me grab that. So now we're going to put our applesauce. So if you didn't get the packet from the library with the apples and you didn't make the applesauce, you need a cup of unsweetened applesauce. So I've already measured this cup, and I'm just going to get it out of there. These are fine. Can't use that. It's all going to get mixed together eventually. Okay, so clean that out, get every bit. Got our applesauce in there. Now we need the milk, which is 1/2 cup of milk. Okay, 1/2 cup. Pour that in. And then you need some more brown sugar. Now we need 1/2 cup. I am all messed up today. So we're gonna scoop up again. I got it inside my bag and I'm pressing it down. Or you just press it down with your fingers. You want it firmly packed. And you put it in so you can't put any more in. Press it down. Okay. Try to flatten it as much as you can. Pretty much. Okay, there's our 1/2 cup. 3 tablespoons of oil. Where did I put that tablespoon? Where did I put that oil? Okay. And you can use any kind of oil. You can use regular vegetable oil, olive oil, if that's what you have. You got to be careful with olive oil though, because it does have a flavor that you can detect sometimes in your baked goods. So there's 1, 2, 3. And you could probably use melted coconut oil in this as well. Okay, so we got oil and we need an egg white. So this is going to be interesting. I'm going to show you how to separate an egg. So you need a container to put your egg in. And what did I do with that? Oh well. I'm just going to use the container I melted the butter in. It's all going together anyway. Okay, so you have your egg. And you're going to tap it close to the fat end. Just tap it just enough to make a dent. Okay, now we're going to put it over our container. And you're going to pull your shell apart and make sure that you're holding it so that your egg yolk is still in the shell. And we're just going to let that egg white drop over the side. And then we're going to kind of pass it back and forth. Just be careful that you don't puncture the membrane that's around the outside of the yolk as you do this. I imagine you could probably use the entire egg. It might make it a little more moist. Might give you a little bit more volume. I'm not sure. We'll make it according to the recipe, and if you add your egg yolk, you can tell me how it turned out. And I would save the egg yolk because you can always throw it into another baked good or just throw it in with your scrambled eggs if you make scrambled eggs. And now I need to wash my hands because I have egg goo all over myself. And if you have egg goo on your work surface, clean that up too. You should always try to keep your surfaces clean. It just makes it easier when you're all finished. You don't have as hard of a job to do. Okay, so we're going to dump our egg white into our wet ingredients there. And I think this is, they said egg whites to make this a little healthier, a little less cholesterol. They're also saying fat-free milk, but my milk is definitely not fat-free. So we're going to mix all this up together. Let's blend well. So keep, yeah, that egg white doesn't want to mix in there. You just got to keep whapping at it till it totally, see there's a, I don't know if you can see this. There's just a blob of egg white right there. You might, if you have a whisk, that would be helpful. Otherwise, you can just keep doing this and hope that it eventually blends in. And I'm getting splattering things all over the place. Good thing I have a deep bowl. I'm going to get my whisk because that's not mixing in. The whisk just seems to beat everything up better together. Come on, you egg white, mix in there. So you just have to watch because your applesauce gets stuck in the blades. Okay, so now we are going to add the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients. Now we're going to do that mixing, folding again. And when we mix, we don't want to completely mix it till it's smooth. We want it to be a little bit lumpy, because what happens if you mix it too much, your muffins get little tunnels in them. And it doesn't affect the taste really, but it's more the texture. And you want to make sure your flour is all moistened, but you don't need to beat it to death. So it's okay if there's a few little spots of flour in there. That's pretty good right there. So now we're going to spoon it out into the muffin cups. And we want to fill them almost full. So let's get our muffin tin over here close by so we can see what we're doing. Get this stuff out of the way. So just a little bit. Adjustments. Okay. So I'm going to use the spoon from the topping just because it's nearby. And I'm just going to spoon out. So that's just about full. Get in there. And I imagine if you wanted to, you'd probably put in like a half a cup of chopped walnuts or pecans or almonds or sunflower seeds, whatever floats your boat. just fill all of these. I hope we have enough to go around. A little bit. If one of your little unmixed flour lumps is at the top, just sort of smush it down in. Because that'll just make a floury little thing on the top. We're getting down to the bottom here. We're going to have enough. I'd have to borrow from some of the others. Fill them all up. Yeah. A little bit shy. So maybe some of the fuller cups we can share with the not so full cups. Full, so we'll throw some of that over here. And let's see, this one, I'm going to take a little bit off of here and into here. That's pretty good. Get those. Just scrape out with my spatula. Scrape out the bowl with what's left with the dregs. Pop those in there, maybe. Okay. Now we have our topping, and I'm just going to sprinkle with my fingers. Pinch on top of each one, and go back later and add more. If we need to. Can't wait to taste these, but they're really good. And maybe you won't even notice the applesauce in there if you're not a big fan of applesauce. Now we have, can be a little more generous over here. Share the love. Almost done here. Let's see, where do we need a little bit more? Maybe down here. Okay. My hands are all good. We have to wash them again, but that's okay. All right, let's get the little stragglers in there. And we're going to put them in the oven. See, my oven is warm now. Pop them in there for about 20 to 22 minutes. Okay, we're going in. My tripod's in the way. Ooh, okay. Going in. I'm going to set my timer for the minimum amount of time, the 20 minutes, and we'll check them and see if they need more time. And we bake them until they are deep golden brown. So let's come back in about 20 minutes and see what happens. Okay, the timer has gone off. And let's see. Whoa, I always get a blast of steam on my face when I do that. Look at that, look at that. Oh, baby. They look pretty nice and brown, right? Kind of pop back when you push them down. I think they're done. So we're gonna let those cool off for about 5 minutes. And then we're gonna pop them out of the pan and take a look at what we have. Okay, these have cooled for about 5 minutes. We're gonna see if we can shake these out of the pan. Ah, here they come. They're coming. Ah, don't fall down. This is why you need a clean counter surface in case you lose your muffins. Okay, we're gonna let those continue to cool. Don't they look delicious? We're gonna let those continue to cool, and then we'll give them a taste test. Yum. Okay, now comes the best part. Okay, we've got this lovely, lovely cake. See, there's no tunnels in there because we mixed it just right. It feels moist. It smells good. Let's give it a taste. Oh, yummy. Taste the applesauce. You can put a little butter on this. Have it for breakfast. Or a little snack in the afternoon. Pretty good. I hope you enjoy this. Just a few final thoughts on these muffins. When I showed you the ingredients, I showed salt, but there actually wasn't any salt in the recipe. And after tasting it, I think it needs a little bit of salt. Even just a quarter or a half teaspoon of salt will pull out the sweetness of the muffin. Believe it or not, salt makes things sometimes taste sweeter. So my recommendation, my tip would be to add a little bit of salt to the batter. When you're measuring the dry ingredients, add like a quarter of a teaspoon or a half a teaspoon of salt. I think it was omitted from the recipe because these are intended to be a healthier version of baked good for you. Less fat, less salt. But if you don't care about that stuff, go ahead, add some salt. And like I said, you could probably put half a cup of chopped nuts in there to give it a little more crunch. Maybe you could sub out the applesauce for something like shredded carrots or some drained pineapple chopped up, like crushed pineapple. Once you get a basic recipe down and you understand how it works, sometimes you can make some switches and substitutions. You could replace the applesauce with banana, with smushed up banana. You can try out a bunch of different things if you want to use this as a base recipe and just do some variations. I'm not sure how they'll turn out. If you feel adventuresome, go ahead and try some substitutions and let me know how it turns out. I'd love to know how you're enjoying the things that you're making. We love to hear your comments on Facebook and your photos that you want to share with us. Thanks for listening.